Today, September 10th, is World Suicide Prevention Day. It's a day designated by the World Health Organization and supported by a multiple of organizations, both small and large, across the world, to help bring focus to this very important topic and to this very important feeling. Because when we are feeling suicidal, it is a feeling that is coming up to let us know that something serious is going on. Now, the World Health Organization has given us a bit of a focus for the next 3 years, starting this year, 2024, and going through to 2025 and 26. And that focus is changing the narrative, changing the way we talk about suicide. And for this year, what they want to promote is starting the conversation. So my invitation to you is to join me here in starting to talk about suicide, starting to talk about what we think of it, many of us fear it, what our understanding of it is, some of the beliefs we have about it. So in this video, I want to talk about some of the narrative that's currently or historically has been in place. I want to talk about the kind of causes and conditions, that this is not a random feeling or this is not a random death when it results in death. I also want to talk about how common it is and share a bit of my own experience. And then finally, what you can do about it if you are yourself feeling suicidal or you're with somebody who is feeling suicidal. So historically, we have certainly in English-speaking language or in European wide and of course also in other cultures, we have had a perception of suicide as something that is a sin, that is something that you commit, like a crime. There's been a lot of prejudice and a lot of stigma. There's also been some beliefs that it's an act of selfishness, that there is an act of cowardice. So there's a lot of very negative judgment. There's a lot of blaming the victim here, the sufferer here, for something that is going on that is beyond their ability to cope with. Now, in the last sort of 5, 10, 15 years, the language has been changing. So we're not now talking more about death by suicide or death from suicide, like death from cancer, rather than something that you commit. And also kind of moving away from that narrative of cowardice or selfishness or blame and starting to look at, hang on a minute, suicide or the risk of suicide is in a way an illness, is whether it's acute or chronic. It is something that happens, that comes together, that creates conditions that leads a person that is experiencing those suicidal feelings to feel that there is no other alternative. And so taking it seriously is looking beyond the kind of historical narrative that we have, is the way actually to reduce the risk of suicide, to help people respond to this feeling when they're experiencing it, and actually bringing much more humanity and compassion, most importantly, insight. This is, as far as I can tell, and I've been doing this for a while, this is not something that people choose. And I certainly know from my own experience, when I have felt suicidal in my life, that is not something that has been by choice. So really recognizing that this, like anything else that is we're doing with our mental or physical health, is in a dynamic, is in a relation to the causes and conditions that we find ourselves in. So then let's talk about some of those. So there can be, often there can be sort of indicators of mental health issues, of physical health issues. If people are feeling serious and significant pain over a sustained period of time, it can feel like there is no other alternative, there's no other exit than death by suicide. And it's that kind of when we feel we've got no other choice. And that's, of course, where, for those of you who are familiar with the first aid for feelings technique, which is awareness, breath, body, and choice, it's that choice that is so important, that there is that recognition that actually, even though I am suffering, even though there are things going on, there's a context here that I feel is beyond me to deal with, in this moment, what can I do about it? So I really want to invite you to get curious, to rather than kind of shy away from this feeling, because it can feel scary. When we feel suicidal, we can feel scared that we'll actually take that action. Or when we're around somebody that we suspect may be feeling suicidal or has shared with us that they're feeling suicidal, fear comes up because there's a real risk of death here. And of course, when there's a risk of death, we get scared. It's a healthy response to a situation. So that kind of invitation to remember that it's more helpful to be curious than critical, to remember that if somebody's feeling in that state, and that includes yourself, that there will be causes and conditions, even though they may not be obvious at first glance. The next aspect I want to talk about is just how common this feeling is. Because, and this is why I really applaud the theme and the focus for the next 3 years, is to change that conversation from being something that happens to just very few of us. It's actually, this is a really common experience. For some, it may happen once or twice during a lifetime for a really small amount of time. For others, it's much more something that they're dealing with on a more frequent or chronic basis. But it's a bit like thinking that you'll never get physically ill. You know, it's like you never get a cold. Feeling suicidal is a response to when you are feeling trapped. So that trapped feeling is the core of not feeling like you've got a choice. It's like you haven't got a bolt on, you haven't got an escape route. You are stuck in a situation, you feel trapped in a situation that you can't get yourself out of. So if I can't change anything around me, or I can't change, for example, chronic pain or intense experiences, then that kind of, okay, the only way out is by death. So therefore, actually looking at, well, actually, how common is this? And the truth is, we don't know, because so many of us are so ashamed, we're so scared to talk about it. We don't feel like we can talk about it with other people because we feel a lot of shame around feeling suicidal. And because so few of us are actually standing up and speaking and saying, I have felt like this, or I am feeling like this, there is this lid on a really shared experience, which means we can't have a sense of solidarity, camaraderie, belonging, that this, like all other feelings, is information and it is shared by all humans. This is something we are likely to experience at some point in our lives. And if we don't talk about it like any other feeling, it creates this kind of vacuum in which we can feel disconnected and even more isolated when we're feeling so intensely suffering. So that kind of starting the conversation, starting to talk about, actually, I have felt like this. Have you felt like this? When you feel like this, what do you do? Who do you reach out for? What helps you sort of stay with that space or stay with that feeling when you're in that space? So just taking a breath. Let's just recap what we've talked about. We've talked about that there is a belief system. There's a judgment around this feeling. We talk about that there are causes and conditions, that this feeling doesn't just come up. It's not random. There will be logic. There will be reasons for why people are feeling this way, you or somebody else. And then just how common it is. I have experienced this in my life, and it's one of the key reasons why I developed First Aid for Feelings and the First Aid Kit for Feelings. So having a kit, having something set aside in a box like plasters and paracetamol is paramount in a situation when you're feeling this intensely, because when you're feeling suicidal, you are so adrenalized, you haven't got access to the part of your brain that remembers the things that are good to reach out for, people that is good to reach out to, or remembers to help you think your way through, actually, okay, what choice do I have in this moment? What choice between here and taking that action is available to me when I'm feeling this intensely? So then what to do when you're feeling like this or somebody else? That kind of having a first aid kit, having things already in place, having things, maybe write a letter to yourself, as in a physical letter, have it in an envelope that you go to and read to yourself that you have written when you are feeling more resourceful. To kind of have phrases, to have music, to have movies, books, walks in nature, to have activities, and just like you reach for paracetamol or bandages, you reach for things that help you in that moment. And then when you're with somebody who trusts you with that information that they're feeling suicidal, to let them know whether you're able to respond to them. So I really hear the intensity of how you're feeling. I feel really helpless or inadequate here. Do you know that there are helplines? For example, I know in the US, in the UK, in Europe, in most countries, there are phone lines you can use. Nowadays, there are texts. You can send texts and have a text conversation with somebody. There are online services as well through chats on websites. So there are a number of ways in which you can reach out. So that's the key bit here, is that you are not alone, to reach out for connection with another human being or an animal. If you have a pet, to reach out for, your cat, dog, bunny, horse, tortoise, but also if it's reaching out for connecting with animals, like seeing animals in nature or watching videos online, reaching out to another being that gives you a sense of that belonging, that camaraderie, that shared human experience that we suffer. And feeling suicidal is one of the most intense sufferings we can experience. And the thing is, it's impermanent. It doesn't last. So somebody coined that suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary experience. And that is really important to bear in mind, that actually, when the feeling arises, paying attention to it, caring for it, getting help, getting curious, using that Sherlocking that we talk about in the First Aid for Feelings manual, really having a sort of method for how you work your way through into, well, what are the causes and conditions here? How can I address some of the things that are activating this feeling so that this feeling doesn't have to show up? We're coming to the end of this video, and I really want to encourage you to take heart. Know that myself and others that you may or may not know are feeling suicidal have shared this experience with you that you're feeling at this point. That this is a human experience, that it's important to reach out to somebody who can be kind to yourself, because in this moment it's unlikely that you can be kind to yourself. To hold on for just a bit longer, reach out for a little bit of help, just one step, that then helps you take the next step. To then be able to have a bit more access to your resourceful part of your brain, where you can think through more of a plan. How can I help myself through this? Because of course, first aid is just first aid. It's just in that moment. And if you're feeling this intensely, you are likely to need medium or even long-term support to help you work your way through the physical and emotional and mental symptoms and experiences you're having in this moment. So if you want to stay in touch, you can book a discovery call with me. You can sign up to the newsletter. You can come onto Insight Timer, the meditation platform, where we have live events every week. And just last week, we talked about feeling suicidal. So you can reach out to a community, reach out to friends, family, reach out to healthcare professionals, reach out to therapists if that feels relevant and helpful to you. The main thing is, when you're in that state, because of what it does to your brain, because of the chemistry that are going on, it's really unlikely that over a longer time period you're able to help your way through this by yourself. And there's no reason to. None of us can see the back of our own head. This is something where we need to connect with others to really feel that sense of place and purpose with our siblings, our friends, our family, in the wider context of the human experience. Do get in touch with me or somebody else. You're not alone. And remember, as always, 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 it is more helpful to be curious than critical. Till next time, as much as you're able to, go gently with yourself.